Ever since I started making content about Arcane, I have been searching for that one theory, a single idea that makes everything click, that answers all questions about Arcane, about storytelling, about life, about the universe, the holy grail of analysis. Subscribe, like the video while I proceed to overanalyze a stuffed animal for 15 minutes. Ahem. Bunny, what is Bunny? What is a Ryo Valdiani? That is our starting point today. Oh, surprise starting point. Powder finds this here, and it comes back here. Seems pretty significant. Powder calls it this word, not a real word as far as I can tell, not even a lore word. And the question of what this thing was, what this moment was, had been needling at me for months. It seemed purposeful, it seemed significant, and I could not figure out what was going on here. And little did I know I was going to find the answer to it with this very theory. It was in the back of my mind when I started realizing how strange all of this bunny business was. So let's back up and go through the history here. Vi, the child, encounters Bully. Bully throws Bunny into Sky. Bunny stays in Sky throughout childhood of young Miss Violet. Fast forward X years, Violet has become Vi, teenage badass. Vi plans to go to Benzo's to turn herself in, preventing war. Vi retrieves Bunny, gives Bunny to sister to inspire her. Then this happens.
Vander?
Now, to us, it makes sense that Vi gave her sister Bunny in this moment. We were there for this conversation where Bunny's story was first told. We know it represents overcoming weakness, and that's a lot of what Vi and Powder's sibling dynamic is all about. Vi overcoming that childhood moment of weakness is something she hopes will be symbolic to Powder one day in overcoming her weakness as well. Vi knows she's about to go away for a long time. Bunny is perfect token of that idea, perfect symbol of empowerment to leave with her sister while she's gone. That makes sense to us. But not to Vander. Vander didn't hear any of this. So how exactly does he piece together Vi's entire plan to turn herself in just by seeing Bunny? Vander probably knows the history here, but not what it means in context of the sibling relationship. And even if he does, Vi giving Bunny to Powder has to do with their relationship, not with Vi turning herself in. So how does Vander make that connection so fast? How does he know to go straight to Benzo's? And the answer to this may surprise you. It is a plot device, obviously. I don't know. The show needed some kind of thing, some kind of moment to make Vander stop and go, and then go run to intervene. This pretty much worked, and that's probably the answer. Plot devices like this happen, it's pretty good, it's not perfect, and that's probably the answer. But when I was thinking about this, I was like, what if that's not the answer? What if I just pretend to ignore that and make up a theory anyway? What then? Ryo Valdiani. So I scoured the internet for answers to this, and I think it's something that Arcane just made up. It's like a Piltover artist name or something, like a Rio Jackson Pollock, a Ryo Valdiani. So once again, it appears in episode 1, it appears in episode 9, and its reappearance is kind of crazy if you think about it, because at the end of this scene, it was here. It was gone. And Jinx brings back a lot of old random childhood junk for the Tea Party scene, yes, Bunny included, but all that was stuff she basically had on hand. She had Bunny with her in episode 3, Vander's play was at Banjo's, a lot of other stuff she has, she clearly brought over from the last drop after Silco adopted her, but the Valdiani, she had to dive into this gross undercity water for who knows how deep. Definitely deep enough that both her crew and Deckard's considered it completely lost when she threw it in. And keep in mind, there was a lot of junk in that haul. The cream of the crop here was the crystals for sure, but next in line, good chance it was the Ryo Valdiani. If it's a work of art from an artist who just goes by a single name moniker like that, and Ryo Valdiani implies it's an artist famous enough to have fakes of his work out there, that means when Powder lost the loot, this piece was a big chunk of the monetary value she lost for sure. She lost it as a weak little kid, and now she got it back. The Ryo Valdiani is a parallel to Giving of Bunny scene. Vi righted a childhood weakness because now she's strong enough, and she gave that product to her sister. Now Jinx righted her childhood weakness because now she's strong enough and gave the product of that to her sister. Bizarro Bunny, I think that's what we're dealing with here, but that's just showing us where to look for the answer. We need to go deeper into Bunny lore, then both that and this will make sense to us. So here's our complete list of scenes now. So we're going to look through all this, we're going to look for commonalities, we're going to look for a shared idea here. So we have episode 1, Bunny's story, episode 2, Giving of Bunny, and Vander with Bunny. Episode 3, Powder has Bunny when Vi abandons her, Powder has Bunny when she's freaking out alone, Powder has Bunny during the explosion, and Powder has Bunny during Vi betrayal. Episode 5, Bunny appears in flashback, and we have Bunny pops up the moment Jinx fails with a hex crystal. Episode 7, Bunny on desk while Jinx staples herself. Episode 8, Bunny shows up in Jinx's fever dream, is hugged by Caitlyn. Episode 9, Bunny on table during Tea Party. And finally, Ryo Valdiani, sort of, our anti-Bunny scene. So 12-ish Bunny scenes. What is the common common theme here. And I think what you have to say is that it's a duality. First thing we can definitely say is that it represents a lack of capability due to childhood weakness. Vi cannot get this thing down. No matter what she does, as a kid, she is too small, too weak. So it represents these temporary periods within our lives of weakness that don't feel temporary at all. I remember the first time as an adult I saw a kid, like a 6-year-old kid, so upset that he was too small to do something. And I just got hit by this wave of flashbacks. Like, it's this thing we just forget about. When you're a kid and you're too short or too weak to do something, and all the adults around you are like, oh, just give it a few years, you'll be big enough. They may as well have said 10,000 years. It's going to be forever until you're big enough. And it's a real source of agony for kids. That general powerlessness of childhood, but concretized in you actually being physically frail and tiny. It's terrible, and as soon as we grow up, we just sort of forget about it. So anyway, that's thing number 1 for bunny symbolism. And this is story-side symbolism, by the way. It's what bunny represents to the characters themselves. It's very clearly the meaning Vi sees in this object. So how does that fit into our scenes? Well, that feeling of powerlessness, of being held back by problems that seem insurmountable. That's what a lot of these scenes are. That's why it pops back into the story abruptly when Jinx can't get the hex crystal to work. In an instant, Jinx is sucked back into that state of incapability, that weak child headspace. And this headspace, by the way, just to jump ahead of myself a little bit, this is a headspace that basically every character in Arcane experiences. Every flashback is about childhood powerlessness. Vi in episode 1 clearly, Jason in episode 2, Echo in episode 3, not a flashback, just a scene. Kate can't escape from her family's control. Mel has a massive powerlessness complex. Silco's isn't as a child, but his drowning thing is all about powerlessness. And speaking of Silco, Deckard is definitely all about this. Vander, not a child, arguably also fits this in the bridge scene. A lot about Victor fits this, both health-wise and socially. So Bunny in episode 5 is here to highlight that motif. Bunny flashback in the boxing scene highlights it as well. Jinx cannot beat Vi no matter how hard she tries. In episode 7 and in episode 8, Bunny shows up and we see Kate with Bunny. Both scenes that are showing Jinx's fear of annihilation at the hands of replacement. That Kate is stronger, more capable, more lovable. Kate is a better sister than she could ever be. Which Kate is obviously not, because that would be called incest. And it's already super Freudian that she kind of looks like Vi's mom. That's a tangent. Let us move past it. So, symbol of that devastating childhood weakness feeling, that is thing number 1. But, and here's where it gets complicated, Bunny also symbolizes overcoming that weakness. Vi gets Bunny down. She gives it to Powder to inspire her to trust in her own unique strengths. That theme is dangled in front of her like a carrot, very apt, during scenes when Jinx is trying to overcome her childhood weakness. The boxing moment turns out to be a moment that is all about weakness, but it starts out as a moment where she thinks she's going to overcome that weakness. The Kate hallucination is Kate being a stronger sister than Jinx could ever be. Her embodying Vi's hopes and dreams for her sister that she can never achieve. And it's there in both scenes where Jinx does actually overcome her weaknesses. It's there in episode 3, and it's there in episode 9. And this is where the Vander question gets answered. How did Vander know what Vi was going to do? How do you know to go to Bento's? And this is where we need to go a level deeper.
Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
Arcane is a simulation. Okay, just kidding. And obviously this video is a little bit off the rails. I cannot find it in me to make a completely serious, straight-faced video when I'm talking about a bunny for 15 minutes. But that doesn't take away from the fact that what I'm about to say is a real idea. This is a real theory, and it's one of my favorite ideas in all of Arcane because of how truly deeply perceptive it is. It's a way they characterize this topic of change and empowerment and growth that I think is one of the biggest reasons the show strikes such a chord of realism with us, because this idea is true. So let's examine very closely how empowerment works in Arcane. To answer the Vander question, we need to understand the scenes between Vander and Vi. Vi grew up with this big, powerful hound of a man, so to speak, who she idolized. Her childhood trauma left her with a need to become strong and protect the one she loves, and becoming like Vander, the guy who fought Piltover, that was how she was going to do it. And then something really confusing happened. She did it. She did this plan. She became a badass fighter prodigy. And Vander said, no, that's not how you do it. That is not what protecting people looks like. That is not the fight that it takes real courage to face. It's this fight.
You look weak.
It's the opposite of what you think it looks like. That's the real way to protect people. What you thought was protection, what you thought was strength, that just gets people hurt. Getting stronger isn't this linear, intuitive, idealistic, rose-tinted path to glory we imagine it to be as children. That's superficial. That's a fantasy. It's a delusion, really. It's not how the world works. The actual process of becoming stronger, of growing into a capable person, is not glorious. It's confusing. It's ugly. It's devastating. And it looks nothing like what you thought it would look like. Vi wanted to fight. Instead, she realized she had to do the opposite. That was the only way she was going to be able to take care of the people she loves. And it was this confusing decision for her. It was ugly, shameful, backwards in a sense. And it was devastating. That's not what she thought it would look like at all. Powder wanted to invent things that worked. And she did. She got stronger, she grew, and it was confusing, it was ugly, it was devastating, and it looked nothing like what she thought it would look like. Jinx wants acceptance, and she gets it, but again, it was confusing, it was ugly, it was devastating, and it looked nothing like what she thought it would look like. This is an idea that everyone ends up understanding except Vi. Vi is so close to it for the whole show, and she does get there in this scene. Then Vander pushes her down the stairs, and it's like he undoes that character development, which, by the way, what the heck, Arcane writers, that is so interesting. Vi develops hard in this scene. She goes through a crazy change for her character, and then it gets undone. After the scene, she's back to, oddly enough, her comfort zone. She's back to fighting, and she never gets that close again for the entire rest of her arc. The entire rest of the show, she is fighting. She's trying to get others to fight. She's imagining Vander telling her to fight, which he might have done in this particular situation, but she doesn't have flashbacks to Vander telling her not to fight, which was his whole life philosophy, and probably the most important idea he was trying to pass on to her. That whole direction is blocked off for Vi after the scene. It is closed off, and she can't even understand it when others around her are going through this process. We see this lack of understanding with her and Jace. This is what Jace thinks empowerment looks like, a stupid, shallow, childish idea. His big take power moment is literally a crayon drawing of a superhero. And then he has that moment of real development, real empowerment after he kills the kid. And how does it go? Say it along with me. It's confusing, it's ugly, it's devastating, and looks nothing like what he thought it would look like. And he comes out of that a new person making new kinds of decisions. Decisions he never thought he would make. And Vi sees him when he's in the thick of the ugliness of the confusion, and she doesn't get it. Echo has gone through this. He had his powerless moment with Vi, and the strong man he became was not the vision of strength he idolized, which was Vi literally. He wanted to become Vi, and he ended up becoming something not really like her at all. He became a defensive fighter who survives and protects those he loves by running and hiding. Vi cannot understand it.
You should have learned more. You still punch like a little boy.
Basically, every character has their powerless moments, and then their way out is this confusing, ugly, devastating moment for them. Silco fits this for sure. His trauma, being betrayed by his brother, forced to become the monster. That is exactly this agonizing process of growth. Mel starts out thinking riches will earn her the respect she craves from her family.
Yet I remain the poorest Madada.
And her way out is taking off the ring and making the same confusing, weird decision that comprises Jace's empowerment moment. Even Kate, her path is more subtle, but she starts out unable to solve any of these big injustices she sees. And then she does something that she could never imagine doing.
In what mad world would I trust someone like you?
And that changes her life completely. Vi doesn't get it. She's the strongest character in the show, but she never becomes strong in this expansive, life-changing way like the rest of the cast. The return of the Ryo Valdiani is the same lack of understanding on Vi's part. Jinx is demonstrating that she's overcome that childhood weakness in exactly this confusing, ugly, devastating, unexpected way we were talking about. She's about to have that moment that Vi had here when she did the same for Powder. That is the image Vi wakes up to. This is not how Vi expected the loot from that first heist to come back to her, and again, she's just lost as to what she's seeing. That is Arcane's idea of empowerment, and that is how Vander knows. He knows the story of Bunny. He may have had some sense of why Vi gave it to Powder, what it symbolizes for their relationship, but how does he get from that to Vi turning herself in? Because Vander is a guy who knows how getting stronger works. He has been through it. Because Vi getting Bunny down means she is outgrowing childhood weakness, which means she's about to do something utterly uncharacteristic and life-changing and confusing for her and ugly and devastating for her. And in this situation, that can only mean one thing. That is the fake answer to how Vander knows, because I do think I'm reading a bit much into it, and the real reason it needed some kind of showing, not telling device to get him to realize, to get him to intervene. Like we said, that's okay, devices are okay, but the idea itself is a true idea, both in story and IRL. This is undeniably Arcane's idea of strength. Any Bunny-related connection? Tenuous? But this is the takeaway Arcane is getting at. And weirdly, Vi was so close to this idea. And I gotta say, I hate wordplay like this. I'm gonna say it anyway, but borderline too cheesy for me. Vi was so close.
What makes you different makes you strong.
She meant what makes you different, like your unique qualities. But it almost sounds like she is saying what makes you different, what transforms you, is what makes you strong, which is this idea. And she's not saying that. That's cheesy. But even her idea is very close to this. Strength isn't this monolithic ideal. It's not the crayon superhero. It takes a different form for everyone, and it's a different form from what you may think. Powder's strength ideal at this point in the story is a crayon drawing of Vi, basically, but her actual form of empowerment will look nothing like that, and Vi understands this, so she is close. She just doesn't get there. Fascinating place for the writers to leave her at. But yeah, true idea IRL too. Actual growth growing up is nothing like what you think will be like as a kid. For those of you watching this who are in high school, that is a confusing time. For those of you watching this in your 20s, that is a challenging and terrifying time. time. And to both demographics, I ask you, does this time feel anything like you thought it would feel? Speaking from my own experience, it does not feel like you're becoming a stronger person or a more capable person, but you are. Every moment of pain and confusion could be obscuring moments of immense growth. And it's so hard to see until you're out of it, and then you look back and you're like, wow. That is bunny theory. Growth, whether it's personal development, whether it's scientific advancement, whether it's political progress, never takes the simple, glorious, idealistic form we expect. If it's part of the human experience, it's bound to be like anything else in life. It's bound to be confusing, it's bound to be ugly, it's bound to be devastating, but it is growth, it is progress. And season 1 focuses on the dark side of this, but it also shows us that glimmer of hope through the whole thing as well. It shows us these new places we can get to that we never imagined, these moments we can have, these people we can connect to. And it shows us that when we go through this agonizing process, it really is growth. We do get what we want. Powder becomes a capable person. Jinx gets self-acceptance. All the characters are better off when they go through this, or they're dead. So, not completely hopeful, but that's bunny theory. I think it's a beautiful idea. So, just some takeaways for the writers watching. Number 1, make symbols unexpected and simple items. A simple stuffed bunny symbolizes overcoming weakness. A simple top symbolizes reality. A plain gold ring symbolizes corruption or greed or selfishness or whatever you think the One Ring symbolizes. You can make a fancy sword symbolize strength. You can make a fancy crown symbolize power. It works, but much more interesting in my opinion if you strip all the adornment from the object so that all of the meaning comes from just what we know the object to be. And if we didn't know that story, then this thing would seem like nothing to us. It's a great way of coaxing the audience to engage. Number 2, not all your characters need to get the big message of the story. Here you have everyone going through a similar transformation, and Vi doesn't. And Vi actively demonstrates that she doesn't really get what the other characters are going through because that's not who she is. And that's fine, and it's not just fine, it's interesting, it's organic, and it leaves her in a very interesting place. Number 3, related, you can let your characters regress, you can let them keep their flaws. And I know last video we talked about regression, how it's a bad thing, but we're dealing with something a bit different here, because this is not true regression, it's just a different path. Vander would say it's regression, but maybe Vander's wrong. And for us, the audience, it certainly feels right how Vi just attacks her problems dead on in this way. Her hanging on to this flaw, this way of operating, it's not just something we're waiting for her to get over. We like this Vi, we're happy she's like this, it's interesting to us. But this idea, I cannot stress this enough, is so interesting to me. You never see a character change and then reverse that change and then never go back. So cool. Number 4, don't sacrifice truth for a moment that feels more story-like. I know about you, but I end up falling into this trap very often where I'm looking for a certain type of resolution. The clouds part and everything makes sense, and we triumphantly defeat the bad guy using the valuable life lessons we learned along the way. And every conflict just melts, and everyone gets together and we sing and we dance. That's what I find myself looking for so often. But character development, especially resolutions to arcs, do not need to be pure and glorious. They can be confusing, they can be devastating, even if it's not a tragedy. If the idea behind it is true, having a more complex resolution will be more meaningful than just superhero saves the day at the end. It definitely still needs to feel like a resolution, but you can do that in a way that is appropriately, realistically ugly, and that might serve your story much better. And not every story should be gritty and agonizing. Superheroes and happily ever after is also great. I'm just saying don't shy away from the ugly if that's the story you're telling. And on that note, just to add in one more point here, you've got to wonder about Vi specifically and Season 2. Is this scene her bunny moment? Is this how she grows and develops and matures and becomes this, the Vi we know from League? Or does she do the Vi thing and dig her heels in, and we'll see that big moment of growth in Season 2, along with whatever other trauma we know for sure is coming that season, because it's Arcane. But I'm getting too much into my next video's territory. Next long video will be all about Season 2. We actually know a lot more than it seems about what's going to happen, and I have a lot of thoughts. So subscribe to catch that. And I'm going to be trying to time posting that video with the news that is coming about Season 2. And yes, you heard right. It seems very, very probably that we will be getting something during this Netflix event. That's June 6th to June 10th. Maybe some stills, maybe dates, maybe if we're really lucky, another teaser. Either way, expect my video to closely follow that news once it comes. So in other words, might not be on a Sunday like usual, but video coming then, or if there's no news, video coming anyway. Okay, that's it. I think I'm done. Subscribe, and any comments that don't use the word bunny will be ignored. Comments that use the word bunny in especially creative ways will receive extra attention. Patrons, thank you as always for the support. Shoutouts to all of you, and thanks for watching, everyone.